Welcome to another episode of the Closers Klub. I have Alex Gibson today. He's a real estate developer, started fixing and flipping a few years ago and has quickly transitioned into a real player here in the city of Boston. And I'm super excited to have him on the show to hear his story and he can share what it takes to be successful, to build a business in Boston in real estate today. So what's going on, Alex?
Hey, Robert. Yeah, thanks for having me out here to the podcast. Just started following the Closers Klub. I've really enjoyed the content and the other guests you've had on, so I really appreciate you having me out here. I'm staying busy, man, with a handful of projects. Just closed out a round of single-family residential redevelopments, which has kind of been my forte, as you mentioned, for the past 4 years since I got into business. I'm still going to continue to do those types of projects, but I've also recently transitioned into some larger projects, what I refer to as proper development, a 9-unit new construction in Dorchester, as well as some residential new construction, single-family townhomes, Roslindale, Waltham, Dedham, areas like that. So most of my work has been, just outside the city, but I've also obviously done some projects in the city of Boston as well, including the project in Dorchester.
Excellent. You recently told me you put your first development deal under contract subject to permitting.
I did recently put my first deal under contract subject to permitting. There have been some caveats to that I'm still navigating, so I'm optimistic about the outcome. You got to get used to rolling with the punches in this business. Nothing is guaranteed until things are closed out. But I've been very happy with sort of like the training that I've given myself leading up to this moment and feeling like I am have the knowledge and sort of like the network to execute on a situation like this when I've been given the opportunity to.
Nah, man, you have. And thanks the other day for giving me the tour of your 9-unit, man. It's coming out amazing. It's a phenomenal project, great quality work. You've got a great team over there. And I definitely want to recognize you for, really having the courage to transition from fix and flipper, single family residential development to larger multifamily commercial development, essentially, because it's not an easy leap. And so I definitely appreciate you for giving me the tour. And, just want to know, Alex, what did you think it takes for someone to make that leap? Because you just recently did it. And I think it's important for folks to kind of understand that you don't have to be this big time developer to do big deals, but you've got to find a way to make it happen. So what do you think were the keys to allow you to do that?
I think the first key is developing relationships with people that that you could trust, because there's no way that I would have felt comfortable jumping from single-family residential redevelopment into doing 9-unit new construction if I hadn't been sort of like curating and nurturing this relationship with the people that I ended up partnering with on that deal for years, right? And when I first met them, I had obviously no idea where that relationship was going to lead. But it's very, very important to nurture your relationships. And I also think that it's really, really important to put in the reps, when you first start out, you're going to be doing a lot of analysis. You're going to have, a lot of offers that go out that don't end up getting accepted. But just following that blueprint and that rubric at the beginning is important, kind of being robotic about the process. But once you put in the reps, it can begin to become a little bit more intuitive to you. And you can start to recognize the nuance of various situations and sort of start to trust your intuition and your instincts about what stands out to you about a deal being a good deal and ultimately worthy of your time and effort and the return that you're hopefully going to make when all is said and done.
Excellent, man. Excellent. And let me ask you this, Alex, as far as your success, right? And I'm calling it out. You are successful. And really, like I said, I want to recognize that. What do you think the key habits that you've developed over the years? And again, this is more personal or can be business related, but what habits do you think really have allowed you to be consistent and enabled you to kind of start to build your business, to where it is today?
Yeah, man, absolutely. It's a great question. I get it often. I think everybody sort of in the space gets it often. It's a little cliche, but I'm always working on my mindset. I can't say that it's perfect. I don't think that many people can, but I'm always working on improving it and keeping everything in perspective. Beyond that, I think, it's a lot of consistency. It's difficult to sometimes know if the things that you're doing day after day, sort of the repeatable tasks are working. And as somebody who's kind of like type A, who's a hard worker, it's easy for me to think that everybody's that way and everybody's out there working just as hard. But as I've kind of reflected on it over the years, and the things that I've been implementing consistently have yielded success, I don't think there's any other way than to recognize that the work that I put in on a consistent basis is what leads to me sort of generating the opportunities that I've been able to get. So I like the analogy of like hammering at the same spot on the rock, so to speak, time and time again, and eventually that rock cracks. So just being consistent, I think, has been huge. I didn't necessarily realize it at the beginning, but that, in retrospect and as I've reflected on it, I realized that's been a big part of what's helped me get to the point that I'm at now.
Excellent, man. And as we start to peel back the layers, I want to go back a little bit to your origin story, man. I know you grew up in Connecticut, not originally from Boston. So tell us a little bit about how you were raised, coming to Boston, how you landed here, and how you ended up in real estate.
Yeah, man. Super, super proud of the town that I grew up in. I was just telling Amy, it's a small town in Connecticut. I'm very proud of being from a small town. It has an amazing culture.
What town is it?
Woodbury, Connecticut.
There you go. Putting it on the map right now.
Let's go.
It's on the map.
No, very, very proud of being from that town. Sort of just pride myself on being like a small town, all-American kind of kid, and I just kind of picked Boston after I'd moved to Colorado for a couple of years because I wanted to be a little bit closer to home, closer to a lot of my friends and closer to family. As far as landing in real estate's concerned, I was just sort of wandering around in my 20s, had a bunch of random jobs, some sales jobs, and was doing okay, but nothing really gave me the satisfaction to really feel as though I was taking advantage of the opportunities that I had been given. I had a great childhood. I had amazing parents, and I just felt like I owed it to myself and I owed it to them to pursue something greater than what I was doing at the time. Ended up randomly going to a seminar, kind of a funny story. I think I just clicked on like an Instagram link. I don't even think I'd had Instagram for that long at that point. Ended up, a 2-hour sales pitch. Then I paid more to go to the weekend-long sales pitch, and ended up making a really big decision. I invested $35,000 into an educational program. It's a company called Fortune Builders. I'll sing their praises. People can say what they want about Fortune Builders, but they gave me sort of like the blueprint and the rubric to get started. From there, everything was on me. I had to go out there and implement and take action. They didn't own any part of my company once I started it, but it was a big leap. And I remember all the fears and the apprehension and the headaches and the sleepless nights, almost like it was yesterday. They're vivid memories. But having been able to get to the point that I have over, the past 4 years, really makes me reflect with pride on that decision and, realize how far I've come.
Excellent. No, and it's funny. We have that in common. I know we've talked about this, but I started with Fortune Builders as well, a little bit earlier than you, back in like 2009. I went to a RIA meeting. Dan was actually there. Yeah. And I don't know, was Stan at the meeting you went to?
No, they were a little bit bigger.
They were bigger, right? Yeah.
I did get to meet those guys. When I went to the larger seminars, they were out there kind of like shaking hands and taking pictures, but they actually started in Connecticut, which I also thought was cool. They're sort of like, at their core, sort of like understand like the grit and determination that is like the New England way. Even though they're West Coast kids at heart, or West Coast guys at heart, I should say. But they did get their start in my home state, and they knew a lot of people here locally. So I sort of identified with that as well. But yeah, that's cool that you got to meet those guys.
I met the man and it was like a little meeting. It was like 2009 was a crazy year, right? Because the market just crashed. So they were out here still trying to kind of rebuild their brand, rebuild their business, and grab market share. So they were making the rounds at these monthly real estate group meetings. It's probably only like 50 people there, but yeah, that's what it took. And that kind of sparked my interest. So that's something we have in common, man. Same foundation.
No, I was super pumped to realize that you were familiar with them and that you had gone through the at least something similar.
Correct.
When it comes to Fortune Builders, and I think it's amazing that there is a training program out there that teaches people how to invest in real estate. There's thousands and thousands of programs out there for real estate agents, but there's really just not as many for real estate investors. So what those guys did, I think is amazing. And one thing, is just kind of a spinoff of that I think is cool is what people like you are doing in the city of Boston and starting these real estate investor sort of like centric, brokerages and lending platforms, and really just areas for people who are in the real estate investor space to kind of congregate and share ideas and perspectives and learn from each other. Because again, there's so many things like that for real estate agents, but there's, in my opinion, not enough of them out there for real estate investors. So kudos to you for that.
Appreciate it, Alex. Based on what you're saying, it really sounds like you believe in self-education and really investing in yourself to really get the life you want. And with that said, where do you think that comes from? Is that kind of a foundational belief you have? And, how do you think that served you in your career to date?
It's difficult to say where it comes from. I think it's just sort of embedded in my personality. I think that I touched on sort of like the opportunities that I had, growing up, amazing parents, amazing friends. And I just really felt blessed for all that. And I felt like the onus was kind of on me from there, having been given everything that people had already invested in me to make the most of myself in my career and in self-development, and just sort of trying to fulfill my potential as much as I possibly could. So I think a lot of it sort of stems like that and from that. And then I think other elements just pertaining to my personality in general, it's difficult to say where, what the origin story is there, but just, being type A, being somebody who wants to get things done, being somebody who believes in productivity and, finding fulfillment, is the best answer that I could really give as to far, insofar as to where it comes from.
Gotcha. But do you believe most people in today's world have more resources at their disposal than ever before to really grow and learn and, invest in themselves and learn the real estate business?
It would be difficult to argue that there's been, a better time in history to really make the most of, becoming the person that you want to be, whether that's in entrepreneurship or towards any other endeavor. There's never the perfect time. As it pertains to like my personal journey in real estate, it was always a seller's market from the time that I got in. It was always very competitive. I don't think that there ever was a time since I'd begun that people would have said in that moment, in the present moment, that was a good time to get into real estate or to start, the type of business that I created. But I think that now when people are looking back, especially, as we enter into more uncertain times, I think people can easily reflect and say that, you can pick a year, 2018, 2019, 2020 would have been a great time to get in. It's easy, hindsight's 2020, right? So I don't necessarily think that there's a wrong time to get started on your journey towards fulfillment, towards personal development, towards starting your own business. The resources are out there, but you have to be willing to put yourself out there as well, be a little bit vulnerable, send out some DMs, make some phone calls, make some cold calls. And those are the types of things that I've never really been afraid to do,
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that I don't have an ego, but I'm more than willing to cast it aside, to be vulnerable, to try to build a relationship, to reach out to somebody that I don't know.
Excellent, man. No, I appreciate you sharing that. What would you say was the biggest obstacle to starting your career as a real estate investor, and how did you overcome it? And it could be at the beginning, it could be at the middle, it could be recently, but what would you say was the biggest challenge you faced thus far in your real estate career?
It's tough. If I'm being honest, it's tough to point to one thing in particular. I just think in a general sense, it's sort of like the uncertainty that you sort of have at times, not necessarily in the market or in anything external, but it's easy to at times kind of like doubt yourself, and as you grow into different iterations, as a person and as a business, it's easy to doubt what that, if you're capable of the next iteration. Are you capable of going from a solopreneur who's just really self-employed to somebody who can take on full-time staff and inspire and really help other people grow and provide for those people? So again, I think through every iteration there is some self-doubt, and I'd be lying if I said, I stepped out into those, different iterations boldly each and every time. But I definitely think it's important for your own solace and your own peace of mind to be taking at least gradual steps in the directions that you want to head, and have a plan for that.
Gotcha. So in those moments of doubt, Alex, like what was it that kind of allowed you to continue to keep moving? Like, was it just the willpower? Was it something about, wanting to hit the goal? Was it a mentor? Like kind of speak to like the confidence to keep going.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the suggestions for sure. I think for sure surrounding myself with like-minded people who are also, growth-minded people. Me and you met through Level Up Mastermind. Groups like that, Level Up in particular, has made a big difference in my life. Shout out to all the people that contribute, especially Guy Tano, who we both know.
Yes.
Who started that group. So having people like that and surrounding yourself with people like that has been huge. I know that they say don't compare yourself to other people. It's a sort of you versus you kind of thing, but a different way to kind of look at those types of things is like, you can compare yourself to other people in the way that insofar as you allowing yourself to be inspired by other people who are out there achieving and doing great things. So it's not so much comparison in a negative way, but like seeing, this person's a phenomenal communicator. This person's a phenomenal public speaker, or anything else that they do really well that you have aspirations of improving upon. I think you can kind of like, if you're surrounding yourself and spending time with those people, it's a great way to sort of motivate yourself to step up into the next level.
Absolutely, man. I mean, I think that to your point, every time we are looking for inspiration, we go on social media, we're looking in our networks to see if there's someone out there doing what we want to do and what we can learn from them. I remember me as a very young businessman, and this might sound like kind of weird, but I think other people have done it. When I was like in my early 20s, my ex-girlfriend's father was the first legit businessman I met, multimillionaire, had a huge house. I didn't even know people had houses that big unless they were celebrities. So like I went to this mansion and all this, like, man, so I started to dress like him. I wanted to walk like him, talk like him. And, I think that really speaks to our desire to emulate success, right? If that's what we're seeking, we emulate what we want to be.
Yep.
And obviously I formulated my own personality and really played to my strengths. But I think that that's really how we learn, is getting in environments where we can kind of get very close with people who are doing what we want to do. And Absolutely. When you're able to do that, it really gives you the blueprint. And then, like you said, it takes a lot of that fear and, those obstacles out of the way, because like, well, they're doing it and they're right here in front of me. So it's possible. And, I can lean on them for advice if things kind of go a little awry. But no, that's a great point you brought up.
Yeah. I think that like there's one or two ways of interpreting it. There's people that go around, those people that, seem to have it all. And like the must be nicers, they see something like that and they think must be nice. And they just immediately begin to hate on what that person has. And then there's people like you, who sees it and like, if he can do it, why can't I do it? Right. And you touched on a good point about, you kind of found, what worked for you, and sort of developed your own authentic version of what was going to bring you closer to a lifestyle or whatever it might have been about that guy, that you admired, the way that he moved, the way that he walked, like the way that he talked, the relationships he had, the way that he communicated with people, but you did it in your own authentic way. It sounds like, so you stayed true to yourself. And I think authenticity is incredibly important. We've all had, an infinite amount of our own unique, like special experiences that have made us who we are. And I think, embrace the good and the bad and put it all out there, for people to hear, and you never know who you might inspire. But I think authenticity is one of the best ways to just kind of brand yourself and make a name for yourself.
Absolutely, man. Couldn't agree more, man. I definitely want to speak more on the deal side, Alex, and kind of get a little bit into the weeds. Have there ever been any deals that you tried to get and you missed out on them? And if so, was it a situation where, you decided not to pursue it because it didn't fit your model, or the seller changed the terms? Have you had any interesting experiences thus far where a deal slipped away and maybe it came back or didn't, that you encountered thus far? Because I think it's important for the listeners and viewers to kind of hear the reality of how real estate is. It's not always peaches and roses. There's real challenges out here.
Absolutely. There's no shortage of stressful situations. I mean, we're dealing with money. We're dealing with construction. And we're just dealing with real estate overall. Three of the most stressful things, industries, that people kind of deal with in a general sense. So there's going to be stressful situations. I always sort of approach every situation, especially as I step up into bigger opportunities. You mentioned that, permitting contingent deal. And this is the same sort of mindset that I espouse to other people as well, is if you come across an opportunity, is just approach it in a manner that you feel most comfortable. Chances are, if you've put in the reps, you have the intuition to execute on the opportunity better than you're probably giving yourself credit for. And if it's something that you haven't quite done, just step up into a way that makes you feel comfortable and make an offer that you feel comfortable making at the time. So that's the way that I sort of perceive situations. And, a lot of times it has worked out. Obviously, there have been times where it hasn't. As far as like crazy deals that, I thought I was going to get that, maybe went sideways, nothing really crazy comes to mind. Obviously, there have been, stressful situations, offers that I've had accepted that for one reason or another didn't go out or didn't work out. But I've always prided myself on being incredibly easy to work with. So I kind of come up with my offer price, and then from there, if there's a situation with like the seller or the real estate agent, there's any kind of like nuance that they or sort of specific item that they want sort of included in the situation, then I'm happy to kind of give that to them. But overall, just try to kind of keep things even keeled. Not really a ton of pushback, as long as the number's there. I'm usually cool with like most of the other circumstances. Basic example, like bought a hoarder house. For a few weeks after we bought it, there was still a lot of stuff in there. Just kind of like communicated with the owner. Obviously it wasn't ideal. It created, some tense situations between me and my contractors while they were still trying to work in there. But ultimately, like, my goal is to gain a referral from everybody that I encounter and really view like everybody that I interact with as a client. It's sort of a little bit of a backwards business model. I always say, like, the people that we're paying, like the real estate agents that sell our deals, they're getting paid not by us, but, directly by us, but indirectly by us. We're hiring them. Our contractors, our attorneys, those are all people that we're paying. But we need to have strong, solid relationships with those people in order to, progress in our business, in order to continue to get stronger as business owners.
I love it. I'll tell you, Alex, I talk to a lot of real estate investors, man, and you've got to be the coolest, calmest investor I've dealt with, because, like, I see people go off the rails, and I'm not like that either. I don't go off the rails. I get frustrated, and I have my moments, but like you, I try to stay grounded at all times. What do you think has helped you with that? Do you meditate? Do you have any habits or practices that allow you to kind of just stay even keeled despite the chaos sometimes going around you? Like, you made it through COVID and all these other crazy times we were talking about earlier. But what do you think there's a habit you do, or is it just your personality?
It's funny you say that, because I don't think that too many people that know me would like describe me as like a chill person, but I think
Gotcha.
I'm a very pragmatic person. So
Yep.
when I encounter stressful situations, as far as the pragmatism component's concerned, I'm sort of always thinking to myself, is my reaction sort of like the reaction that I want to have in this moment gonna ultimately cause me more stress that I'm already enduring right now?
Great point.
That's like, if there's a situation, contractors are the easiest example, not to make them the scapegoat, but obviously, as you know, there's an infinite number of situations where you just want to tell the contractor how you really feel and kind of tell them how it is. But I just kind of repeat, it's almost like a mantra, like, and I have that internal dialogue and conversation with myself often. Is what I want to say, even if it is like the right thing, for me to have that conversation, is it ultimately going to result in me experiencing, or likely going to result in me experiencing more stress as a result? So
Gotcha.
that's sort of like one gut check that's helped me stay even keeled in certain situations. And, just wanting to maintain, sometimes you put so much energy and effort into establishing these relationships that if you kind of like lost your cool at certain points, it'd almost be like starting from zero. You'd have to go find somebody else. So
Right.
It goes back to like, is this just going to cause me to have to do more work if I take this action? So I'm always kind of thinking about that.
No, I love it, man, because like I have a similar mantra. It's similar, but it's flipped. And I always ask myself, is this going to get me closer to my goals or not, right? And you was like, is it going to cause you more stress, which is the same thing, because is it going to take you away from your goals, and ultimately that's how we're able to kind of maintain and keep moving forward, because at the end of the day, life happens and you've got to have a way to cope with it that's constructive, not destructive, and allows you to really get closer to what you want to do.
Yeah, I think just having like an eye on the prize kind of attitude about these projects is the best way to get to the finish line. And I think that anybody who achieves a high level of success, they might not get the credit from the people around them that they're employing, that they're paying this money to. In our case, contractors, again, the easiest example, so I'll just stick with them as the scapegoat. They might not get as much credit as they feel like they deserve, but like we're out there in the trenches every day. We're dealing with a lot of shit. And the only way that you can get through it sometimes is just keeping your eye on the prize and realize that if you want to achieve a level of success, you will need to be willing to deal with a lot of unfortunate circumstances to get to that point that other people might not be willing to deal with. And that's just what it takes if you want to, achieve your goals and get to the point that you've set out to get to in your mind.
Right. No, that's very true, man. Another question I have for you, Alex, is relative to your team and the structure of the business. What are the key team members that you have and relationships you have when it comes to finding your deals, negotiating contracts, getting them closed, managing the projects and getting them sold, and then designing as well? Because you had some pretty cool designs over at the current project you're doing there. So, like, who are your core team members? And again, this is really to just help educate people on how they should be thinking about building the right team to scale a real estate investment company.
Yeah. There's obviously a lot of people involved when you do deals. It touches a lot of people, from the real estate agents who might be bringing you the opportunities and ultimately selling them, to the private money lenders, the people that are bridging the gap between, the people who are providing the mortgage and what you need to close on the deal. Architects, attorneys, there's a lot of people at the end of the day that you need to have as trusted members of your team in order to execute on that. A question I hear from people starting out is deal flow. Probably more than anything else, people want to know where they can get good deals, and the way that I got started in my company, there's various ways to do it. But I got started getting deals through network marketing, which is just a fancy way of saying building relationships. And it's primarily been with realtors. At the beginning, I feel like I was trying to schedule, coffee and meetings with any realtor who might listen. As you sort of evolve in the business, you begin to be able to recognize what types of realtors might be more likely to bring you the types of deals that you're looking for. These could be agents that, are second generation in a small town or in the market that you're trying to work in. They could be agents that work a lot with the state and probate attorneys. So that's been a big deal source for me. And I think that in communicating with these people, you really have to work carefully about crafting, what your elevator pitch is, and get specific on the types of things that you're looking for in order to get them to take you seriously. So that's what's worked for me as far as deal flow goes. As the business has grown, I've needed to develop a broader network of private money lenders. So learning how to kind of have those conversations with people that will eventually attract them into your orbit and ultimately inspire them to trust you enough to lend you money. And that also comes down to being able to communicate your message carefully and having a very thoughtful approach. I'd say, overall the theme is really be thinking a lot about how you communicate, be thoughtful and deliberate in your communication. Other team members obviously include contractors. It can be very difficult to find good contractors. So that's a very, an effort that has to be very consistent and very deliberate. And when you do find those good people, make sure you take good care of them, just like you do the rest of your team members. So I can go on and on about the people that are involved in the business, but those are some of the more critical elements, and those are some of the questions and sort of the pain points that I hear over and over again from people that are just getting started, and as well as people that are veterans in the business.
So it definitely sounds like, Alex, a huge part of your success is really at the core understanding that relationships are the most important piece of the puzzle, and ensuring that you keep those relationships growing, keep them healthy, so that they can consistently serve you and serve the other side. Is that kind of at the core what you've been able to do from your realtor relationships to your lender relationships to the contractors, your attorney?
Yeah,
well?
absolutely. I think that I'm mostly in the real estate space. I can honestly say that I don't communicate too often with other entrepreneurs outside of real estate, but I think that you would find the same themes to be true for anybody who owns a small business, that they're really going to have to nurture and double down on those relationships, especially those people that support you and are kind of the flag carriers for your business, the people that are going to sing your praises from the mountaintop, so to speak, as cliche as all that sounds. They can be difficult to find early on, the people that show true love and show true support. But once you do start to build those types of relationships, I think it's incredibly important to try to find ways to continue to pour into those people, continue to add value to those relationships, while continuing to look for more people like them to build and nurture those types of relationships is incredibly important.
Excellent, man. You've got a great mindset, Alex. And, I think for so many of us out there and so many of the listeners and viewers, it's something that I think some people struggle with, right? Like, how do you maintain positivity and maintain a passion and drive kind of despite obstacles and hurdles? And so I just wanted to know, is there anything you do on a daily basis that you think really helps support, a healthy mindset, your mental health? Are there any, activities or things of that nature that you can recommend for people to do that maybe have worked well for you?
Yeah, I think for me, overarchingly, it's sort of a broad perspective, but I feel best and I feel happiest when I'm keeping the promises that I make to myself.
Wow.
So if
Powerful.
I have a morning routine that I say that I'm going to stick to, I say that I'm going to wake up between 5 and 5:30 every morning, I feel better when I do that. If I tell myself I'm going to run a few laps around the track in the morning as a part of my morning routine to get some sunlight, to get moving, and I complete that promise, I keep that promise to myself, I'm going to feel better about myself. And that's especially true when it comes to the more difficult tasks, the stuff that you could otherwise procrastinate on. If I have that on my to-do list, that I know that they're kind of daunting things that I'm not necessarily looking forward to, whether that's driving projects forward, whether that pertains to, the personal and professional development, all that stuff that's not necessarily urgent, but tends to be the most important if you want to continue to grow and develop as a person and as a business owner. Those things sort of in a broad sense are what bring me sort of the enjoyment and the happiness that allows me to maintain the mental fortitude that I need. Specific habits, I recently started within the past few months developing a much more regimented diet, which I didn't really have before, and that's
looking good, by the way, man.
Thank
it's
you,
noticeable, man. Nicely done.
Appreciate that. But yeah, that's like one of those things where it's like, oh, people talk about, the things that you're putting into your body, and how much better it's made them feel is one of those things that I kind of just chose not to believe. Like, how much of a difference can it really make? But I gotta say, I was pretty surprised by the benefits in my energy and my mood when I started to think and be more careful about the things that I was eating and then putting into my body and be more consistent.
I love it, man. So it sounds like you feel, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but that's also translated into helping you grow your business, right? To success in your business, because you're mentally alert, you're feeling better about yourself, you're able to do more. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think anything that you could do to kind of like increase your mental fortitude is ultimately going to benefit your business. I think that, we've touched on the fact that it's obvious that inevitably on most days you're going to encounter stressful situations. So the more callousness you can like build up in a good way, right? Not like, you're a calloused individual, but callousness you can build up between you and the stressful situations that you're ultimately going to endure, the better off you're going to be in business. And the more you could stay ready for those types of situations, the better off you're going to be in business. And, that's a large part of what you get rewarded for. As somebody who wants to be a high achiever, somebody who wants to do well, and somebody who wants to reap the economic benefits of it. It's another cliche, but if it was easy, everybody would do it, and not everybody's doing it. And some people start doing it and then they stop doing it. I don't have any statistics to support this, but I know there's a lot of facts and figures out there about people that go into business for themselves. And a year later, they're no longer in business for themselves. And then, 5 years later, the statistics are even more grim. And I don't necessarily think that, every single one of those individuals that tried to go into business on their own stopped, discontinued that journey because their business failed. But I think a lot of people get burnt out and they just can't handle the day-to-day challenges, and they just make the decision that it's not for them.
Very true, man. If they had found the fortitude to keep pushing, they would have realized that's what they needed to kind of get over the hump. So yeah,
absolutely. And I think that you need to build out systems for yourself, realize what stresses you out, and build out systems. That a system could be consist of you hiring somebody to take the place of, a task that you just know drains your energy, So finding sort of like the areas that drain you and putting systems in place to sort of buffer yourself against what is sapping your energy, I think is incredibly important.
Absolutely, Alex. And this might not be a single answer. It might be a couple, but are there any books you'd recommend that kind of can, I guess, summarize your framework to business and life, or one or the other, for our listeners to read, to really kind of help them cultivate their minds in a way that is really going to support their success?
I guess to continue sort of in a similar vein to what I just mentioned about, creating the systems, and putting those types of things in place that are going to buffer you against the stressful situations or the things that, kind of take your energy away. I listened to Atomic Habits. It's a very popular book.
James Clear.
A lot of people have heard of that book by James Clear. Absolutely. Yes. But I've also been listening to a podcast by Rob Dyrdek called Build with Rob. As it turns out, professional skateboarder, turned, successful entrepreneur, successful businessman. And I've also read a book called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. And between those three things, one common theme that I notice is going back to the systems, is putting the systems in place. I think our default mode as humans is to be a little bit lazier, to choose the best option. And oftentimes what that difference between the people who, continually execute at a high level and those that don't is the people that put the systems in place to make completing the difficult and the daunting tasks a little bit easier. So admittedly, I'm not as big of a reader as I would like, but those are a few things that have influenced me recently. And I think being able to connect the dots in business and in life is very important. And those are some parallels I saw between those three things. And, it's just about finding a way to incorporate what they're preaching in a way that makes sense, for me in my life and my business.
No, great. Thank you for sharing that, man, because I think it's important we know what resources are out there that really kind of allow us to get our minds right on a daily basis. I'm a true believer that every day we have to find a way to kind of get our mindset right, like switch from negative to positive, because inherently I think a lot of us can be negative, and life can make you negative as obstacles and challenges come up, or you're tired or you don't want to do it. So if you adopt the right habits on a daily basis and you're listening to the right content and getting the right stuff in you, like mentally, it will kind of shift your mind and allow you to continue to work towards the goal and the life that you want to build for yourself.
Yeah. Sometimes you just have to be kind of your own hype man,
Right.
I don't always practice what I preach, but I think the more that I begin to talk about different things that I haven't quite implemented yet, you sort of develop this cognitive dissonance between where you're at and what you ultimately want to get to. So for instance, for me in my life right now, I want to cut back on social media. And I haven't, quite implemented anything that's going to help me get closer to that goal yet. But because I've identified it as something that I want to bring myself closer to, I've been able to create a cognitive dissonance in my mind that I know that sooner than later I'm going to begin to work more towards becoming the person I want to become in that category than I am right now. So those things I think are incredibly important. But yeah, being your own hype man, getting yourself in the right mental state every day to where you want to get to. All those things are really important in protecting, your mind in terms of what you consume and what your content diet is, what you put in front of your face, what you listen to, what you observe. You have control over those things, and the more things you can be consuming that are positive and are gonna lead you to a good place, the better off you're gonna be.
Very true, man. Couldn't agree more. So in looking back and reflecting, Alex, on your real estate career to date, what advice would you give your younger self, if there's anything you could share with Alex from your pre-real estate days?
I would certainly say start younger. I've used the word cliche a lot. It's cliche advice, but I didn't start. I wouldn't say that I started super old, but I wouldn't want. I certainly would say that I do have some regret over spending time doing things that didn't fulfill me. It's not any kind of monumental regret, but I think the sooner that you can get started living your life's purpose, the better off you're going to be, and that's going to be different for everybody. So, if I could go back and do a few things over, I would have listened to my internal voice and learned to trust my instincts and my intuition a little bit sooner. I also think that, I can say for myself, at least, I was looking for what's the perfect thing? What's the perfect thing for me to do?
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of in my head about what to choose, and not, up until I went to that seminar that I mentioned at the beginning, the real estate seminar, not for a second did I ever think real estate, so the lesson or the takeaway there is just to kind of pick something, and, even if you can just identify something with it that's sort of under the umbrella of sort of the career path that you choose to take, and cling on to that sort of aspect of what you think you might enjoy about it, and embrace it and start to move sort of in that direction. And then, especially if you start young enough, you can adjust and adapt from there. So, sort of just starting sooner, and learn to trust your instincts and your intuition. I think a lot of people are looking for, external answers, external validation, somebody else to tell them that it's okay. I don't think that you're going to truly become successful in anything until you learn to trust yourself to give yourself the answers.
Great advice, man. And I think a lot of our listeners are going to benefit from that, because too many of us are searching, running around like a chicken with our heads cut off, trying to find, that shortcut, that magic answer, that, that thing that's going to save us. But at the end of the day, it's really trusting yourself, right? And like you said, developing that intuition and following your gut, and really just trying to learn along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's great.
I think that there's, a lot of people get bad advice as well.
That's true too, right?
So that's
exactly.
Another thing, just kind of going back to learning how to trust your own intuition. You might be getting advice from people that that you trust, that love you and really have your best interests at heart, but they might not have the same. They're likely not going to have the same vision for your life that you do, and you're really only going to meet, if you're entrepreneurially minded, you're really going to only meet those people by going to seminars, by joining masterminds, and being deliberate about the network of people that you hang out with. So learning to trust yourself is huge. That's the way that I look at deals. When I come across something that I think has some promise, I rarely seek external counsel. If I do, it's a couple close trusted people, because I don't want anybody clouding my vision as far as what I see for that particular opportunity. But I think you can apply the same principles to a lot of decisions that you're ultimately, or a lot of big decisions that you're going to make in life.
I had to do the same thing. I mean, when I decided to leave my corporate job and go into real estate full time, my family is like, Rob, are you crazy? You're going to leave that retirement. You're going to leave that pension. You got kids and this and that. But for me, there was no other way. I had to do it. And these are people who love me. These are my grandfather, my uncles, my aunts, my dad. But,
Yep.
I look back and it was the best decision for me. And like you said, I wasn't around entrepreneurial people. They kind of all had more of the, work for, the in corporate or work for the, public sector
Absolutely.
mindset, which is fine. And it works for them and it's great. And they've been instrumental in my life. But when it came time to jump to the business side, I needed to surround myself with a different group of people and really figure things out from, again, my intuition and then also input from those who were my mentors, those who were doing what I wanted to do. So,
Yep.
no, I can definitely appreciate that, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
It sounds like there was some cognitive dissonance going on. You had this vision for what you might want to become, and, you were over here in a different area, and your mind just wouldn't leave you, your mind wouldn't leave you alone about
Correct.
what you wanted to get to. But
Yep.
my situation was similar in that, just wasn't raised around entrepreneurs, wasn't raised around business owners. Thankfully, I would definitely have to give credit to my family and, to people in my circles. Nobody was ever really telling me like, oh, that's crazy. You shouldn't do that. I wouldn't say that like I had their wholehearted support in terms of like being the flag carriers for my business and the people that were like strong proponents. But I didn't really have too many naysayers, so I'm super thankful for that.
Absolutely, man. Excellent. So, Alex, what's next for you, man? I mean, right now you've obviously are doing the things you want to do. You're growing your business. You're scaling your business. What's the long-term vision for you? Is it to become a developer of large multifamily commercial properties? Is it, to do something different outside of real estate? Like, what's the long-term play?
I'm sort of in the process now of sort of reevaluating and trying to determine what the long-term vision is. At the moment, I see it being a mix of, like I said before, single-family residential redevelopment, which I've historically done, and then continuing to pick off the bigger developments if I can find the right strategic partnerships. But overall, I want to be sort of evolving into more of an entrepreneurial type of role where, I can kind of focus on big picture items throughout the course of any given day. I always want to stay humble, kind of be willing to get my hands dirty, and step into situations where, I'm needed and things just need to get done in that moment. But I'd like to, remove myself in certain situations from more of the minutia and the day to day and really begin to put myself in a position where I can be not only, the deal architect that I've historically been, but also more of an architect of my own existence and start to grow the company with, full-time employees and things of that nature. So yeah, that's basically it.
Nice, man. No, I really appreciate you sharing. I want to thank you first and foremost for coming on the show, Alex, and being transparent, dropping a lot of knowledge, dropping a lot of gems that I believe will really inspire folks and empower them. And just for your willingness to be a teacher through example, right? A lot of people talk the talk, but you're walking the walk as well, man. And I can attest to that firsthand. How can people connect with you? I know you say you're not that big on social media, but how can folks connect with you? Maybe they have deals they want to bring to you, or maybe have a few questions that you can help answer.
Yeah, I'm super accessible. I'm not big on social media. I could drop my phone number here. I could drop my email here.
Drop the email, not the phone number, man, because this thing might get 1 million views in a few years, and everyone's called Alex.
This podcast is about to blow up after this episode, for sure, man. This podcast is about to blow up. You got to take me with you, though, if it does.
Let's go. Let's do it.
But yeah, my email is alex@evergreenpropsllc.com. So that's Evergreen, PROPSLLC.com, alex@evergreenpropsllc.com. Like I said, I'm very accessible. I love to connect. If you email me and you want to connect, I will definitely get back to you. And I'd love to chat. But I appreciate you having me on. Amy, you've been great. It's been awesome to come into the studio and see the office, see what you guys are up to here at Crowd Lending. I'm excited to see, what the Closers Klub has in store. You guys are off to a great start, and I'm excited to see you guys evolve.
Thank you, Alex, and thanks for being a part of it, man.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
All
Thanks
right.
for having me.
That's a wrap.